Welcome to 24 November 2021. This is the day before Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving Eve. So I'm actually not expecting anybody to make it. But there's a pinned post in the comments, link to come in here and try me out. Just don't be stupid. All right, so I'm going to just prattle on as if I had a subject anyway. Actually, I do have a little bit of a subject. There's been a lot of comparisons between two different court cases that happened this week or within the last week. One is a clear-cut case of self-defense. The other one, not so much. Both have been adjudicated. The first one was not guilty on any charge. And you know what? Rightfully so. There was literally nothing there. I don't, a lot of us are wondering why they even bothered. Or was it just to mollify the same mob that created the situation? Hey, let's not hold the mob responsible for their actions. Let's hold the guy they targeted responsible for their actions. That's a possibility. The other one's not really not so clear. The other case involves three guys and a shotgun and a pickup. All right, so you know the circumstance. You know the case I'm talking about. That's clearly not a cut and dried self-defense case, and it never was. I don't know if they even argued that. But it also was clearly not the murder that one of them has been convicted of. It was manslaughter. It was manslaughter. He's going to prison for something he actually did. No, he's going to prison, but not for what he actually did. And that's really unfortunate. Rather than just accept the fact that, hey, yes, he screwed up, but not as badly as we want to pretend, they're going to hit him with something he didn't do just to mollify the same crowd that created the other situation and had just a couple months before created an even bigger situation in downtown Atlanta. Was that Atlanta? It's a Wendy's restaurant. Hey, Luke. Oh, excuse me. I believe it was Atlanta anyway. Absolute terror that these three would walk on everything meant that they were bound and determined to throw the book at him. The judge in that case was tying the nooses before the indictments were even read. And he made that overwhelmingly clear when last Friday he threw out half of their case. He basically told them, no, you don't have a right to a fair trial. You're going to be found guilty, and I'm going to make sure of it. Even despite that, one of them was only found guilty on the two least possible charges, and another was found guilty on the lower sets of charges. None of them were charged with manslaughter at all. And all of them were charged with 2 counts of everything, despite only one victim. Only one person ever being targeted. I found that a very curious detail, but we'll talk about that someday. with an attorney. Hopefully Viva does something on it. I'd really be curious. How do you charge somebody twice for the same crime? Very interesting detail. Oh. Now, Luke's here, and only Luke's here so far because I'm doing this one way early. Um, I had usually it's scheduled for about an hour from now, but I'm starting early because you East Coast guys, you're up at 2100 to watch this. That's not fair. That's really just not fair. Um, and B, uh, Drew is not streaming tonight. I don't know why. Which brings to mind the fact that I have made a command decision. I am going to be moving this to Thursdays at 1800. It's not fair to the East Coast folks who are, I think, 3 hours behind me. Yeah, 3 hours. So it's 2100 there now. I might have to start it a little bit earlier still, but I'll phase that in. It's just not fair to them. Sorry for the rest of you. Yeah, both streams are going to be Thursdays now. Oh, excuse me. Today was a rough day. All right. So anyway, right, that's the housekeeping and my little rant. Comparing Kenosha and Atlanta as criminal cases is not even appropriate in any way, shape, or form, but neither is actually murder. And that's very unfortunate that the Atlanta judge decided to prostitute his bench to the lowest possible bidder. Ooh, that's not a very nice thing to say, is it? No, it's not. Worse still as I defend it. All right. Luke, think of a question. I need one. All right. In other news, the entire world right now is testing the theory of mandatory carry on a global scale. Wait, Carrie, what on earth could you possibly be talking about? That doesn't even make sense. Well, yeah, actually it does. NASA is testing a new piece of equipment to knock an asteroid off its course so that it would not strike the Earth if it was headed towards us. Now, this particular rock, apparently this asteroid, is not actually aimed at the Earth right now, or if it is, it's very tangentially. And it's been more or less facetiously remarked that the asteroid, it would be great irony if they hit the asteroid, knocked it off course, and it ended up on course for Earth as a result. Pretty sure that's not the way it works, Tim, but okay, we'll go with that. The idea of defending an entire planet from an asteroid is an expression of self-defense at a global scale. Now, for those of you that think it's not a real threat, think again. Very interestingly, for those of you old enough to remember the film Starship Troopers, that was written by the novel. First of all, was good and the movie was crap. Second of all, the novel was written by Robert Heinlein, who also wrote The Moon is a Harsh mistress, in which lunar colony threatens to throw asteroids at Earth if Earth does not comply with some demands that they've made. Okay, that is what it is. People of Earth mocked the idea of throwing asteroids at Earth. The Moonies literally tell them, this is the point that we are aiming for. This is the time it's going to impact. Stay away from there. Don't go there. It's not going to be a safe place to stay. People of Earth did not listen. They went to watch it by the millions live. They all died. Well, I mean, that's a work of fiction, right? Well, Shoemaker Levy 9 told us, no, this is not just a work of fiction. It's a real target. It's a real thing. We're actually slightly lucky that Shoemaker Levy 9 did not turn Jupiter into a second star. And for those of you old enough to remember watching those impacts live, you should be well aware of just how dangerous that could have been. If a comet can do that to a gas giant, imagine what a rock can do to the Earth. Well, you don't really have to imagine too hard. The archaeological evidence is all there. A rock can't, a big enough rock, can be a legitimate threat to an entire planet. And we as a species have an obligation to try to save ourselves. And that's what NASA is doing now. Obviously, a meteor strike versus a deliberate act are two very different things, and we're going to assume that most people cannot use an asteroid to destroy a planet. Most people. It's still a real and legitimate danger to all of our lives, and we have an obligation to try to stop it from happening. So is NASA now a mandatory carry agency? I'm just throwing it out there. Ow. All right. Luke says, I'm brain dead right now. Okay. I passed around a couple of days ago, I believe it's generally unlisted, a link to a video I did over a year ago called Learn to Speak Code. In it, I'd say that when you're talking to people, or when people are talking to you, what they're saying doesn't sound right, you should probably pay a whole lot more attention. You might be saying something you're not going to hear. An interesting example is, I mean, this is a real story, so don't look at me. There was a woman who called 911 after somebody entered her home and started beating on her and trying to hold her hostage. I forget the story off the top of my head if it was a domestic violence or a home invasion robbery. But she had her captor convinced that she was calling for a pizza. She dialed 911. 911 dispatcher picked up the phone. She said, yes, I'd like to order a pizza. And the 911 dispatcher was just enough on the ball to say, wait, are you being held hostage? The woman said, yes. Is your captor there right now? Yes. What is your address? And they went from there. The woman calling 911 was speaking code. And fortunately for her, the 911 dispatcher having never met her, having never heard of her before in her life, was still able to pick up on the code that the woman was speaking in. A small salute to that 911 dispatcher. It's just tea, by the way. I don't really drink anymore. Keep moving right along. Sometimes you just got to listen to something, and if it doesn't quite sound right, there might be something more they're saying. Luke is watching now. He's heard me speak in code before. He may not have picked it up at the time because I was speaking in a whole lot of code, because I was surrounded by people that I did not necessarily want hearing the message. Luke and a few others I thought were decent enough to know the truth. There's a couple of them I discovered, no, they're not such good people either. That particular code was about weapons, not firearms. I have never done anything with I don't sell my guns even when I have a really good offer. All right. I had a M92 Beretta, the military M9. I had an opportunity to sell it for $500. That's the truth. Wasn't interested. Nope. I don't sell my guns for anything. All right. I keep them forever plus a day. Unfortunately, that was one of the ones caught in the fire too. That sucks. That gun actually has a body on it. Now, before you go reading autistically, that gun was a federal surplus sell-off. It had been an FBI agent's gun before I got it. And that FBI agent had been in a shootout with some bank robbers. Now, whether that gun actually was the one that killed the guy or not, I don't know. Killed the suspect or not, I don't know. I know the agent who had that gun did make a fatal shot. There were no charges preferred against the FBI agent. It was such clear-cut self-defense that they can't even justify investigating it past the departmental level, and they did anyway because that's standard procedure. It was absolutely justifiable shoot at every level. Hey, Bill. So, yeah, Luke has heard me speak code. Just not about the guns that certain other people accused me of. And in case y'all hadn't guessed, yes, I do hold grudges. Bill, if you got a question, please ask it. That's what this is all about. That's what Wednesdays are absolutely all about. So, learn to speak code, right? Learn to listen when people are talking funny around you. You know you did it when you're a 8-year-old, even though you couldn't spell. You couldn't spell, which I can't either. You knew when mom and dad were talking and trying to hide something from you. Okay. Bill isn't going to be asking a whole lot because she's busy dealing with her kiddos. She's just going to be listening in. Yeah, I get it. Been there, done that. God, I miss it. Excuse me. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I'm still getting used to having glasses at all. And I don't even have my bifocals yet. Those would be coming in tomorrow, except tomorrow's Thanksgiving. No live stream tomorrow. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Where was I going to go next? Oh, sorry, guys. I'm not ignoring, but okay. Something that'll make a lot of people and I don't care, is I do not like Donald Trump. He's an asshole. I've met him. No, he really is an asshole. I do not think I would vote for him if he ran again at this point. I also don't think he will run again. Because if I were him, I wouldn't either. All right. After everything he's gone through so far, it wouldn't be fair. That said, I also know, as well as much as you people do, what really happened a year ago this month. We all know it. The trying to hide it is only making it worse. And that's okay. Because the backlash when this finally does all come out, it's going to be 100 times as bad. Let me give you an idea just how bad the backlash really is. You've never seen Fix Bayonet's face. And I am extremely ambivalent about putting her face on YouTube because her face is on YouTube. It's a video with a on a scheduled status. Right, it will remain private until it goes public, where she talks about certain people involved in what happened a year ago, and tells everything that happened. At that point, it is. It's 93, I think, is when these things occurred. And she tells everything and names the names. Joe Biden is not a name she will be mentioning in that video. Not even a name she heard until 10 years later? Oh, hell, I left the phone in the other room. All right, well, anyway. About 10 years later. So that's the one name you can't look forward to seeing. There are some other people that you might be hearing about right now and might have heard a whole lot about over the last 2 years that do get named. And no, Donnie is not one of them. One of the few people she cannot talk shit about. She never even met him. Oh. Oh, my. Okay, hold on a second, guys. I'm doing something. Half needs to be done. Here we go. Oh, that's unfortunate. Hold up. Bill wants to know people that do get named. It's Ghislaine, one of them. Not to my memory, but that circle, yeah. Yeah. People in those circles. No, Jeffrey Epstein is not a person she ever actually met, but people that met him are people that she met. That's not even a secret, people. I've talked about it before. Yes, I noticed Vil is saying she's having trouble with her phone. I know, it's because her fingers are wet. Because she's giving her kids a bath. Sorry, guys. You know how fidgety I can get. All right. So, yeah. I've had to talk Fix down 3 times from taking that video public anyway. And it's really over. Well, it really is over what happened last November. She wants to talk about it, and I don't want her to talk about it. Not because they'll deport her, they can't. And by the way, there's no place legally to deport her to now. But because they'll make the rest of her life just as difficult and annoying and bother her and cause her unnecessary trouble. For what it's worth, Brent would say the same thing if he were still around to defend himself. I know because I was on the phone when he's screaming it at her. Okay. How do I put this politely? Everyone whose name has come up over the course of the last year or 2 years either is or is connected to some very, very bad and not nice and awful and horrible people that you've heard about in the past. They're also connected to a particular country that I occasionally speak about. In almost all cases, at most 2 degrees of separation. Do not worry about whether Donnie's coming back or not. And he'll make his decision the way he does. Probably won't vote for him the next time, but in 2024, because no, he needs to go home and be with his family at this point. There's only so much abuse you can endure without without destroying yourself in the process. That said, there are certain people who will be going away one way or another, from, at least from public life, here in about a year. I have a bad feeling that Fix is going to just ignore me and Brent and everybody else who loves her and has told her not to do this in about a year. So take a deep breath. By this time next year, we're all going to be singing a very, very different tune. Problem is that tune might be a much worse one. Not because of fixed bayonets, but because of other people surrounding these legitimately evil people who are going to be making decisions that they're not willing to let their team lose. They're not willing to let their bought and paid for puppets lose. And if they have to burn it all to make sure that the rest of us don't win, they're happy to do that. And there it is. They're not willing to just accept the fact that they cheated and now they're caught. And it's over. We've been talking about the Ardennes offensive a lot the last week and a half, I think it is. In 1944, with Normandy secured and the Allies halfway across France, Hitler had this really, actually, legitimately good idea, strategic idea, but it was not as well thought out as it should have been. He was going to try to drive a wedge between the Americans and the British, a physical and therefore psychological and therefore political wedge between the Americans and the British by punching out through the Ardennes region at a point in time when American air cover or air support was just not going to be available because of weather conditions. Now, this is actually a very good concept, but it had some really serious, follow-through problems. Most important of which was fuel. The Ardennes offensive, they couldn't take enough fuel with them without creating an unsustainably long logistical train. It would just be as vulnerable as the American lines that they were supposed to be punching through were. So the follow-through couldn't be effectively accomplished. Well, okay. The German answer to this, they thought, was to arrange to take American fuel supplies. And this would have been actually very clever and novel solution if they'd gotten to the fuel supplies, which they didn't. And the plan was not built around getting to those, around how to get to those fuel supplies. This became the last gasp of a dying empire. That's the analogy I keep drawing. The Germans were taking one last desperate gamble to try to hold off the invasion for a couple of more years. They didn't even think they were going to win the war. What they were trying to do was hold off defeat for a couple of years in order to force the Americans and the British to come to a separate peace with Germany, and then they could focus on Russia. Didn't work out. That last desperate gamble really blew up in their face when the Germans lost all of that equipment. I think of 200 tanks that crossed through the Ardennes, 12 made it back. Of 150,000, I think it was, soldiers, less than 100,000 made it home. The rest were killed or captured. The last desperate gamble of the dying empire. What does that sound like? Does it sound like maybe the sort of thing that would lead us to try to put the victims of violent crimes in prison for the violent crime that they were a victim of? Or to charge people with crimes they actually provably did not commit just to have that little bit more of a win? I'm just saying. That's also not to say that it was an easy, the Battle of the Bulge was an easy win. It was a long way from an easy win. Had Bastogne fallen, had Bastogne fallen, Germany could have won the Ardennes offensive, or at least done enough damage that the 2-year plan would have been intact. That is a real and legitimate potential outcome. Bastogne didn't fall, but it sure as hell got the shit kicked out of it, to the point where even today, all you have to do is say Bastogne and people instinctively know it's a mem before mem was a thing. That holding out against impossible odds, when you say Bastogne, that's what people think of. Holding out against just absolutely impossible odds. And they did. They held out. Right now, I think socially we're at that early Bastogne moment, that first American century who's standing out on the 4 to 8 saying, the hell? Are those Germans coming up? Hey, Captain! All right. Bastogne had to hold for, I think it was 6 weeks total. We're going to need a little bit longer. But it's the exact same concept. Also, at Bastogne, those men did not know how long they had to hold out. They had no idea. It might have been 2 years or more before relief could come. They had no way of knowing. It's not like Eisenhower and Bradley knew either. How long it would take for them to relieve Bastogne. And that's kind of where we're at right now. They have punched a pretty good hole in our social lines. That was last summer. Now it's still punching through. Oh, last week's decision. All that happened today was something more akin to what happened with those American engineers in a field, or wherever it was, for which certain people would eventually answer. Ironically enough, the mastermind, the man who's actually responsible for it, wouldn't, because he didn't make it through the Ardennes offensive himself. Okay, we're at about 40 minutes now. I'm going to check my gig line and then move on. Oh, God. Excuse me, guys. If I seem a little bit off today, it's because I took a nap and woke up late. Um, and I'm really dependent on those questions, guys. Come on. Oh, although I am bound and determined to keep it going to 1900 at least, for the sake of a few people that do sometimes show up. Just not until 1900 because that's when they're expecting me to be here. It's kind of my own fault. Oh, I forgot my green safe smart. Guys, give me 2 seconds. I gotta go get something. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. You'd think after months of doing this, I'd remember all the little bits and pieces. Pro tip, guys. When sewing, use a sewing thimble. Because believe it or not, sewing needle injuries don't heal very easily. Smelling it already. Love you, Susan. All right, moving on. We're at minute 4:03. Okay. Yeah, thimble. What happened is I was actually sewing up the gloves that I use at work, and as I'm pushing the needle through, it punched all the way through to the bone. I know it punched the bone because I felt it stick when I tried to pull it out. Mm-hmm. I've had little pinholes and other injuries in the past, but that was bad. And it's not healing properly. I might go to see the doctor if it's not healed by Saturday. Mm. Okay. Okay, so I've ranted and I've raved. I've ranted some more. You know what? I just want to talk for a minute. Something really crazy. Most of y'all don't know that I am a brother of steel. I remember when Fallout was actually new and watching a friend play it on his home computer. Of course, this is also back when home computer was like this big by that big by this big. Okay. So, but I remember watching him play it and wondering what this was. And then several years down the road, 2001 specifically, um, I picked it up myself. Now, this was at the point when Fallout was in the dual jewel pack. And I just started playing it myself. I remember something. Oh, wow, this reminds me of something Neil used to do. Oh, this is what that was, right? Flash forward to 2008, 9, something like that, when Interplay went under. That's unfortunate. And they took Van Buren with them. What I didn't know is that some members of the Fallout community had already started doing something else anyway. They didn't care. Um, Russians never care, and this guy's very much a Russian. Even his online name tells you just how Russian he really is. It's Sivet. They came up with an online multiplayer version. 2238 went under. I'm not exactly sure of all the circumstances. Vix Bayonets was playing 2238 for quite some time. I got my fill of it after about a week. But I could see that this had some real potential to become Fallout 3. And kind of throwing this out to the world in general. I'm looking for anybody that could help me learn how to mod this 2238 thing. I'll send you every piece of information I can get, and then just get back to me and show me what to do. Don't do it for me. I want to do it for myself because I've got a lot of things I want to try before I go anywhere very specifically substantial. Okay. If anybody's got some suggestions about topics I should take on in the future, love to hear them. Which reminds me of something else. Yeah. I know this is not Villa is asking go where. I assume that's in reference to the 2238 thing and Discord, I guess. Vil wants to know, did Australia finally rise up? Sort of. Okay, let's get into that. Just over 2 months ago, Australians let their national government know they'd had enough. They were done. There's actually a video of a guy. He sounds like an Aussie, right? And Aussies and Britons do sound a lot alike, so I could be confused. It's also purported to be Australia, so there you go. This Aussie, I assume, is actually telling this cop, in case you don't know, we're not afraid of you anymore. All right, flag on the play. The only Australians who were allowed to breed were the sort that would get with the program. All right. They were going to get with the state's rules and their laws and their little games and not fight back anymore. That's the sort of Aussies who were allowed to breed. 200 years of that kind of mentality does breed a psychology. I believe in evolutionary psychology. Um, the people who survived and procreated had a psychological profile set that allowed them to. In Australia, that was the sort of people who would get with the state, get with the rules, stop fighting back. When Australians tell their government to go to hell, that's telling you a lot. It tells you that the inmate psychology that is Australian has finally had enough that they have to fight back. They feel they have to fight back just to survive. That's not like an American inmate psychology where they fight back. That's a day ending in Y. Australians are fighting back because they really feel like they have to. They don't have a choice anymore. And fight back they did. There's another video, and this is confirmed to be Australia, where it looked like a couple hundred people went running past exactly the spot where a cop was standing. And I don't see him after a couple seconds. Did they trample him? Yeah. Actually, yeah, they trampled him. Okay. I'm describing it as what I could actually see, but yeah, you know damn well they trampled him. Did he survive? I don't know. I honestly don't know. He might not have. In response, the Australian government has now deployed their army into the streets to start rounding up anybody who's speaking out against the state. Now, there seems to be limited roundups for now. The funny thing about Australians is they actually hate each other. All right, there's something about Australians that they don't like each other. As this thing keeps getting worse, yes, the army's been deployed successfully for now to shut down any more talk, any more dissent. Give it a week. I think 1 week of the army being deployed in Brisbane or Melbourne or wherever, and you're going to hear about much more serious riots in Australia. It's going to get that bad. Okay, let me catch up on chat. Guy on the white horse, Vil says, guy on the white horse is Vishnu. I know I've heard that name before and I don't remember. Yeah, the worst totalitarianism is there. And, oh, she likes the term evolutionary psychology. Okay. Evolutionary psychology is easy, so I'm going to hit on that first. Evolutionary psychology is the psychology that develops in people as they evolve. Paranoia is a form of psychological state, right? I am a paranoid sociopath. I know it. I don't even lie about it. Why would I? Sociopath, somebody who was normal, and then by extreme environmental factors, abuse, war, severe crisis, has been made abnormal in the form of having lost some of your empathy. some or all. Um, I'm also paranoid. I believe there are people out there that if they're not planning on hurting me, which most of them are not planning on hurting me specifically, um, they're planning on hurting the first person they can find that happens to make a target. Hey, that guy's busy looking at his cell phone. He's not paying any attention to the world around him. I'm going to go rob him. I'm going to take his cell phone and be halfway down the street before he can say boo. That's the reality. There are people out there like that. Degrees are important to consider here. But yeah, I'm a paranoid sociopath. Um, Paranoia is a psychological condition, right? Well, your ancestors who were able to breed and procreate were also the sort of people who would look for lions in the tall grass. That's paranoia. They survived because they went looking for lions in the tall grass. They survived because they were paranoid. They bred because they were paranoid. The guy who was not paranoid and went through life thinking all is well got eaten by the lions in the tall grass. All right. Oh, okay. Villa's getting into some territory that I know I don't know enough to know what I don't know. About religion. Vishnu is the Hindu god of justice that will reincarnate as Kalki. Kalki? I don't like the misunderstanding of the term paranoia. Survival is about awareness. No, I'm paranoid. And I'm okay with that. I'm not seeing things that are not there. I'm looking for things that I cannot necessarily see. All right. She had also said, yeah, the worst totalitarianism is there, in reference to Australia. No, the worst totalitarianism right now is still China and Iran and the other totalitarian theocracies. Wait, a communist theocracy? Communists don't believe in God. Yeah, I know. That's a type of religion too, isn't it? Hi, Zion. Villa saying Kalki will ride a white horse. And Zion is saying with the sword in his hand. Sounds a little like the Christian tradition of St. Michael. I'm just saying. But apparently Zion knows something about Hinduism, much more than I do. So good for you. I wish I did too. Bill says, communist theocracy is right. It's what they are. Wokeism is a cult within the larger religious order. Okay, I am a Christian, right? Within the larger religious order, I'm actually a oh God, I almost called myself anti-theist, agnostic. I know I don't know enough to know what I know about God, says the chaplain. Not such a good sign, right? But within the agnostic orders, I am in the cult of, and I don't care. All right. My cult within the church, within the religion, doesn't care. Right? God is God. We're not going to sit here and try and tell God what to do. We'll ask, but we won't tell God what to do. But we also heed to the words of Matthew 7:1, judge not lest ye be judged yourself, and by the measure that ye judge, so shall ye be judged. So when I start talking shit about somebody, that's a bad sign. When I start judging people, that's a bad sign. That's somebody you want to move away from on the group W bench. Okay, Phil, I would love to talk to you sometime this weekend about that on Discord, if you can make some time. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know enough about Hinduism to know what I don't even know. Here's what I know about Hinduism: karma, wheel of life, reincarnation. Okay, not a good sign. And that Buddhism is to Hinduism what Christianity is to Judaism. Except that nobody has ever questioned whether Siddhartha Gautama existed or not, because nobody would. What are you, an idiot? Of course he existed. Whereas Jesus Christ, his existence is questioned all the time. Yes, Phil, I do know. I was able to understand that part of my class. Oh, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Damn it. Oh, excuse me. Well, this is life says Yahshua existed. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Not everybody is as. There is a gentleman, and I am familiar with. The man is brilliant, legitimately brilliant, and thinks Jesus didn't exist. I'm not even joking. So I sent him a link to letters written by Pontius Pilate. Funny story. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea at the time. This is fact of history. And he, from time to time, would have to execute people. That is a fact of history as well. So each and every execution he had to, or other action he took, he had to report to Rome. Hey, this month, I set 500 people free from prison because I felt like it. Maybe he just felt like it. I was feeling magnanimous. I set 500 people free because they had tax. They had failed to pay tax. And it just wasn't worth keeping them anymore. Or I put 500 people in prison because they refused to pay their taxes. Executions are particularly nasty business. And you really have to explain. Even if you're right, you have to explain yourself. So he wrote several letters over the course of his time in Judea, explaining individual executions. This month, he didn't execute anybody. He put 5 people in prison for failure to pay taxes. Well, yes, these 5 people, Vil and Zion and Carrie and Grover and Big Bird I put them all in prison because they were refusing to pay their taxes. And that report would come into Rome, and, oh, okay, no problem. And then the next month, when he does execute somebody, and I executed, a man for failure to pay tax. Oh, you executed one of our subjects? Tell me more. Then that's what he would have to do. So this letter by Pontius Pilate explaining why he executed this literal nobody that Rome had never even heard of and didn't care, ended up in the Roman records. And by the way, there was a couple dozen just weirdos running around swearing, I am the Son of God at the time, literally at the same time. And none of them were executed. Okay, the man is clearly insane. He says he's the Son of God, and he's walking around buck naked, except for one sandal. What is this guy's malfunction? Man, they put him in the prison just to get him away from the rest of society, because obviously his mind is not okay. As opposed to Jesus of Nazareth, who was identified as the man called Jesus something. I forgot what else the other letter says. There was actually two letters. One is Pontius Pilate just talking about finding this rabbi he still doesn't know anything about, talking on a hill under a tree, I think it was. And that got to the emperor said, so what? Why are you telling me about this? Well, a few years later, when that wandering rabbi is being executed, oh, yes, I want to know everything about this. Who was this man, and why did you order his execution? Oh, you didn't order his execution. Oh, okay. Then that's not on you. Now, is it on you that it was executed anyways? Oh, yeah, it was. You could have stopped this, or you could have done more to stop it. And actually, that's kind of the direction Rome eventually would go. You actually could have stopped this thing. So come here, we need to talk. Okay. Oh, oof. All right, I'm caught up in the chat. So moving on. I'm going to circle back now. And actually circle back as opposed to use that as an excuse to not answer a question. Oh, yeah, Jen, we knew. The last few months, we're starting to see, the last year, we're starting to see the last gasp of a desperate empire, but do not think that empire is done. Do not for a moment think that empire is over and broken, because it will not be for a very, very long time to come. All right, they will continue fighting to the last man in the last round. And just like Nazi Germany, the last street fight will be literally just that, them dropping buildings on people or dropping buildings in general. Whether Iran took advantage of the fact that a great uh, seismic shift in the universe occurred on 9/11, or whether they helped to orchestrate that, is a question I cannot answer. Um, I don't have a way to know which it was. But it's pretty clear that in the intervening 10 years, they've taken a lot of advantage of the opportunities it presented. And they're still taking advantage of it. It's not an accident that 90% of the Taliban fighters that went into Afghanistan earlier this year all came from the West. Like 1% came up from the South. A few came down out of China. A few. Yeah, that part happened. But 90% literally rolled right out of Iran and into Afghanistan. Like a fucking freeway newly opened. It was the leadership that came up out of Pakistan because that's where they wanted us looking. They wanted all of us to focus on Pakistan, where the leaders were hiding out, and not on eastern Iran, where the majority of their army was hiding out. And actually, about 10% were in Afghanistan the whole time. Just by day they're merchants or telecom employees or school instructors, apparently, some of them at least. And by night, they were terrorists. And nobody paid any attention. Even I missed those warning signs. And my brother, my younger brother, the one who's still around, he actually went to Afghanistan at one point. Something, Air Force, logistics support. If a plane needs fuel, cargo planes in particular, needed fuel, he was the guy that made sure that the fuel would be at the airbase waiting for them. That's when I understand what he did. While he was in Afghanistan, he told us every night power's going, or most nights, power would go out because the Taliban would hit the electrical grid substation or substations to shut them down, to shut off the electricity. Oh, okay, so there's still an active insurgency going on in Afghanistan at that point. That's why we shouldn't have ever left, because it was going to start again. But whatever, it's done now. And that bell cannot be unrung. Speaking of last gasps of dying empires, what was it? Monday, I think it was. It was announced that uh, Joe has taken upon himself to release 50 million barrels of, or 50 million gallons. Maybe it was gallons, which is much, much less, by the way, um, of fuel into the into the U.S. supply. That from the strategic reserve. That strategic reserve is supposed to be used in time of war, and not when you've created a crisis where fuel prices have gone out of control and everybody's legitimately blaming you, right? Like the Keystone Pipeline that your old boss had supported. Oh, yeah, about that. And he shut that down. And another one that he ordered shut down. And a third one that he ordered shut down that most of you don't even know about because it was all intra uh, continental US. So, well, he shut down for a little while. Who cares? It's just an oil, it's just a routine thing. Right? No, it was a deliberate act of sabotage. Vil is saying that this is a 2.5 day supply, and that could be right. That could be right. And it's going to cost billions to replace it afterwards. That is part of the plan. Bankrupt the country, bankrupt the economy, so that we can't take on an enemy again. That would be a very interesting opening gambit to create another crisis behind, wouldn't it? Bill is also saying life is unrelenting war. Well, it relents from time to time. It's called a truce. You don't have to fight for literally every single breath. On the other hand, the real world is pretty violent. It's not a nice place to live. Do not recommend. All right. I'm at an hour and 18 minutes. No. Okay. There's a couple of people I invited that I guess will not be able to make it. That's a shame. One in particular is from New York. A lady from New York that I've been trying to get to come in for over a year now. Has not happened. All right. Vil said of Afghanistan, either we make it a territory or we leave it alone. It effectively was a territory. That's the truth. And we walked away from it, walked away from our friends and our allies there. And that never works out for the people who are being left behind. Imagine if you're in the middle of a fight and your buddy all of a sudden says, okay, well, I'm out. You're on your own, bud. What's that going to do? It's a simple analogy, and yet nobody ever pays attention. It is also an accurate analogy. if this analogy was not true, what are we still doing in Japan and Germany? Tell me. I'm all ears. All right, moving on. I'm not going to read that chat question out loud. But I am going to say the answer out loud. Certain people who very much wanted Afghanistan to collapse also arranged not to evacuate our friends, but the highest bidders. And I don't give a damn who likes that or doesn't. By the way, if for those of you that are going to catch that in the chat, she's not lying. It's actually worse this time than it was when the Russians pulled out. Remember? This has happened before, and I'm old enough to remember it. The Afghan government that was the people who were the government in Afghanistan when the Russians were backing them were actually doing fairly well until the Russians pulled out. That's the truth. The difference between the Russian pulled out and the American pullout is the Russians pulled out because their economy collapsed totally and completely. We pulled out not because our economy collapsed. That was something that they were getting ready to start to do, but because it was part of that plan to get the economy collapsed. There, I said it. All right, so I'm at almost an hour and a half. Story time. Speaking of Joe Biden. All right, y'all know I'm mandatory carry now, and I have been since 2014. What y'all don't realize is back around 1995-ish, because my brain works the way it does, I was never really a gun control supporter, but I was able to look at the line of thinking, understand it, and ask, okay, what do we do from here? Or how would this work? 1991, Senator Joe Biden put before Congress a bill. He called it an assault weapons ban. 14-year-old me, not knowing it. Hey, Squatch. Not knowing any different. I didn't know what assault weapon meant, right? I didn't know there was a difference between the M16 and the civilian rifle, the AR-15. I'd never even heard the term AR-15. It meant nothing to me back then, right? I did not know that there was a semi-automatic only version of the AK-47. I did not know there was an AK-74, right? I did not know that the Dragunov and the AK-47 have a lot of similar parts, but not the same gun, or not the same bullet. Uh, Luke, check me here. It's not the same round, correct? Um, so that's 14-year-old me who's hearing that there's this new law that will ban all of these military rifles from the public. Okay, all right. Well, I'm not sure this is a good idea, but well, gee, I don't know all these things, all these different crazy things. And then the NRA signed on. They signed on because it got that 10-year sunset clause. At the end of 10 years, this law will be automatically repealed. Well, if the NRA is supporting it because of the sunset clause, then okay, it's going to be a very interesting to watch the results. I remember saying to myself something along that line. It will be interesting to see the results in 10 years. 10 years later, we saw the results. The results were nothing. No change. Oh, excuse me. Between those 2 points in time, though, is around 1985. I remember I'm standing in the lobby of Shasta College's administration building. You walk through those two doors, and to your right will be a desk, which is never manned. I've never seen anybody back there. And that's supposed to be your first contact point, and they will tell you how to get to counseling and admissions and admissions and records, and I forgot what the back of that building is. Okay, thank you, Luke. I was correct. AK-47 and Dragunov are not the same cartridge. Moving on. I'm standing there. I'm looking at the desk as I'm walking from, I think, admissions or counseling to admissions and records, thinking, how would an actual gun ban work? Now, it had been a few years. I didn't understand all these things. I admit that. So I had actually forgotten about the assault weapons ban. And I remember thinking we would have to ban all of the machine guns. Yes, you just heard me say machine gun. In a way that for which I would pay a $500 fine someday. And I'm okay with that. I did it back in 95. We would have to ban all the machine guns. Oh, wait a minute. I think they're already banned. Well, okay. But then we'd have to ban all of the pump action or semi-auto. Well, maybe we start with the semi-auto clip fed and not the, whatever they're called, fed. I remember thinking something like whatever they're called, fed. And then we'd have to ban all the other ones. And then we'll have to ban all of the bolt actions and the lever actions and pump actions, I guess. And I remember I got to the point where I realized we'd have to ban all of the muzzle loaders as well. Yeah, literally muzzle loaders. All right. Does this even make sense? I remember thinking at the time something like, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but okay. But that's where we'll have to eventually go. I'm sorry, guys. I fell behind on the chat a little bit because I'm telling you this story. So, yeah. I realized that you cannot ban all of the guns at once. You can't actually repeal the Second Amendment just in one fell swoop. It will never pass. Was I a real gun control support? No. I was more of the mindset, if that's where society goes, then I guess I'll have to figure out how to get along with it. Now, there are some very strange heroes of society. P.A. Ludi, Alan Hart, and a few others who went to prison or are in prison now to prove that no, that's not how it works, Tim. You can't just ban the guns. You can't just ban all the ammo. That's a ridiculous shitpost. And the Avalon Institute proves, yeah, no, you can't even just ban ammo. They'll fashion their own. You would have to make it a death penalty crime to possess even the equipment to do so. I remember thinking that back in 95. Oh. Vil, I said letting Afghanistan collapse was part of making our economy collapse, not the other way around. I hope you love the turkey, Squatch. Vil, assault weapon actually does have a very real definition. That thing back there, it's not an assault weapon. Vil, I don't know who said shotguns are not used by the military. I fired one in the military. They are very much used by the U.S. military. It's the Remington 870, all 5 branches. Exact same shotgun. If you can qualify on it in the Air Force, you're still qualified on it in the Army and in the Marines and wherever else you go. So I don't know who told you that, but they're lying to you. Don't forget how Biden tried to argue for people to defend their homes with a shotgun and didn't need rifles. Yeah, I remember that. Just get a shotgun. Fire it up once up in the air. They'll go away. Actually, I don't know if he said they'll go away. He's also the biggest idiot. And as Squatch points out, he supports reckless discharge of firearms. Ironically enough. Bill says warning shots are not legal. Actually, right now, the law is ambiguous on the subject of warning shots, which is why in Datislav, I made them specifically illegal, except under maritime law. The legality of warning shot. If your warning shot doesn't hurt anybody or damage anything, you're good to go. For those of you that remember from 2015, I believe it was, the Clackamas Town Center shooting. Some guy, I can't remember his name, and I don't want to remember his name. Some jackass stole his buddy's AR-15. He goes in, I think it was through the Macy's store, and proceeds to start shooting people randomly. So a gentleman who was on the mess deck, he's meeting with a friend of his and her daughter. Daughter? I believe it was her daughter. I think they were getting pizza. I think I remember reading somewhere they were getting pizza. His name is Nick Melty. Shit, I keep meaning to look that up again. Anyway, his first name is Nick. I do want to remember his name. Nick hears the shooting. He stands up, and he pulled his Glock 22 out. It was concealed, so he pulls it out of concealment. He points it at Jackass. Now, we don't know what was going through Jackass's mind. We will never really know what was going through Jackass's mind. But when Nick showed up with another gun, he stopped, he turned, he went a different direction, and he permanently solved his temporary problem. And that's the harshest way I can say it on a live stream, at least. Without getting the channel shut down, that is. Okay. Certain members of the anti-gun community, left, right, and indifferent, are saying that there's no proof that Nick was even there. Well, yeah, actually there is proof. He's seen on a video, security video, leaving the building under the sheriff's department. There's no proof he ever pulled the gun out. And you know what? To the best of my knowledge, no. There's no proof that Nick pulled his gun. There's no proof that he confronted Jackass. Even if that video did exist, we would never actually be able to prove Jackass saw Nick and changed his plan because of Nick. We'll never be able to prove that that part did or did not happen. We know Nick was there. He says he had the gun. He says he confronted Jackass. And the only thing he could have done differently was a warning shot. A single shot into the building, into maybe the stonework or something. That's the only thing that the leftists would accept to prove that, yes, he was actually there. And yes, he really did confront Jackass. And then, of course, they'll say, well, no, that was a bullet from a different shooting. Or Jackass never saw it, or whatever. God knows what excuse they'll come up with there. However, and this is a big detail, the warning shot itself would have been illegal, and it's because you can't necessarily know where that warning shot will go. Under maritime law, warning shot is a thing. Also, because of the maritime environment, your chances of striking something you didn't mean to hit, very, very infinitesimally small. Like, so small, I can't even calculate those numbers. In a test, I think, if I recall correctly, they tested 50 caliber into water and only got about 18 to 20 inches before it dropped dead. That's not very far. You're not going to shoot into the water and just randomly hit a oil pipeline or some shit like that. It's not going to happen. That's okay. It's a common misconception. And Bill says, oh, okay, I stand corrected about warning shots. It's a common misconception. It's one I had too. There's also the other version of the common misconception, which is that a warning shot is required. No, it's not required either. The only thing that Nick could have done differently to be able to prove that he was there that day and that the things he said are at least substantiable, would have been to fire a warning shot into the brick or something, or just shoot Jackass and kill him right then and there. One would have been one of these two scenarios, everybody would have understood. Yeah, okay. If I'd been there in the same circumstances, I might have done the same thing. The other, who knows what he would have hit? He might have just hit brick, and that's it. The bullet might have ricocheted off and struck some little old lady with her grandkids. He might have hit a gas line, might have hit an electrical and gas line, might have done a million other things that we can't predict. You cannot begin to predict all of the scenarios that could have gone wrong. Oh, excuse me. And that's why warning shots will be banned under Dataslav. All right. We're at an hour and 40 minutes now. So I'm going to start wrapping it up here. No live stream tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving. Go have fun with your family. Matter of fact, I am going to be at Papa Carey's tomorrow. One of my uncles has asked Dad to come over and do Thanksgiving with him, and I think that's what we're going to be doing. So cool. I also have to get up very early because I got to drive 3 hours to get there. And that's assuming that I'm actually going to Papa Carey's, going to the lake house, not the main house, which is what I understood. I mean, that's where my uncle lives, so. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, throw your last couple questions out, or last couple snide remarks. I'll take those too. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Remember, Wednesday streams, well, first of all, are moving to Thursday, and they're going to be moving to 1800. Yeah, well, starting next week, really. I want to start getting out of it. Second of all, carry all the time. Nick Melly, that is his name. Clackamas Town Center has signs on the doors that said, "This is a gun-free zone." Not all of the doors had those signs, and he says he went in through one of those doors. Right? But okay. You know, I don't care. Those signs would be illegal under Dataslav anyway, so who cares? Or who here cares? Anyway. Either way, he ignored the sign. Or something. And there's a whole lot of people who are still alive now because of his decision to ignore a sign. Signs do not stop bullets. Signs do not stop people from bringing guns into buildings. Signs don't do shit. Right? Simpsons meme. Right? Do not enter. Or enter anyways. What do I care? I'm just a sign, right? Signs don't stop shit. They just tell you, oh, if you do that past this point, you'll be in trouble. But if you're already decided that you will be in trouble anyway, it's not even going to slow you down. Good night, Luke. Good night, Bill. Good night, Squatch and Xeon. And I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay. Yes, Xeon, you've been quiet tonight, but I didn't forget you were there. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap it up here. Keep calm and mandatory carry on. Oops.